There is something called workers' compensation, net federal supplement, which is a guaranteed income supplement on your old age pension, and there's certain exempt income as well, which is going to be taken off at this point. We arrive then at the final sort of stage called the taxable income. And we want that taxable income to be lower than total income, right? Because on that taxable income, we are going to calculate your personal tax levy. So again, I know that if you're employed, you've already paid some tax. We are not taking account of that right now. We are just looking at your taxable income. We're going to calculate what tax you should pay or should owe. Once we have that in place, and we know how much tax you owe, we are then going to try and reduce that liability to as close to zero as we can. So we're going to have our tax bill in front of us. We're going to try and reduce our tax liability. So to reduce our tax liability, we are going to add up and calculate all of our available tax credits. So tax credits are only any good. They're called, these particular tax credits are called non-refundable. So you can have as many as you want, but they are only as good up to the point that it brings your tax liability to zero. At this point, you cannot make a negative tax liability. Yes, I know some people get refunds and whatever, but we'll talk about that later. So deductions happen at this point here, and they reduce the income to as low as we can to calculate our tax levy. Credits, on the other hand, are what we use then to reduce the tax calculation that we have done, to reduce that levied amount that we've come up with. So certain tax credits then would be medical, would be a charitable donation. Everyone has a personal allowance. It would be a disability tax credit if you have one, and that kind of thing. But they're only as good to take you to zero. The closer to zero, the better. Student tuition would be a credit, not a deduction as well. This all makes a little bit more sense if you see it on the form, or somewhat sense. But again, as I've mentioned, I know my chat box is in the way, I'll move it as I'm reading to see it. Again, as I said, this is the introduction to the form. We are going to break it down in stages as we go through the session, so please don't think, oh my gosh, we're going to whiz through that.
Starting route to 7 Bolingbroke Road. Proceed to Bushett Street, then turn right.
So this is your federal tax jacket. Essentially, this first part is the jacket, because when you hit the Ontario calculation, you don't have all of this information, personal information. At the start of the Ontario, it literally kicks in and starts after we've calculated the total income, net income.
At the stop sign, turn right onto Lakeshore Boulevard East.
So Ontario doesn't even feature until that point. So this is your jacket part. It's really important that your identification is down here. I mean, the issues that I have with you get one digit on the road, I mean, one digit on the
At the next light, turn left.
You're not going to get these ones when you're doing research. You've got to get that to this super important.
Để thì anh gọi em hả? Đang làm việc. Đang làm gì?
Đang hỏi không
Thôi em muốn nó đơn giản, em lười lắm. Em cầm theo hũ mì gói lên đó em xin nước sôi thôi. Hả?
hỏi bao nhiêu hết thôi.
Không cần đâu, tại vì xách theo mệt quá.
Okay, so Indian card doesn't necessarily mean you have exempt income. You would have to be working for the reserve, so this is as simple as possible. I don't come across this very often in my office, but we'll look at that later as and when it comes up. Foreign property. Now this is where all of a sudden now, income, this is where Canada wants to know what you might have outside. Now, you don't actually need to report foreign property that's under 100,000.
Starting route to 7 Bolingbroke Road.
I'm going to explain that.
Head south on Carlaw Avenue, then turn right onto Eastern Avenue.
Fill it all in. But just as a general rule, when you are a resident of Canada, your income from any source as a percent is full.
At the light, turn right onto Eastern Avenue.
Property overseas, you would have to report the income. You would also, if it was worth over a certain value when you purchased it, you would also have to fill in an additional form to report it. As I said, we're going to have a lesson to go over the form. We don't go into the details.
In 1.4 kilometers, keep right toward Richmond Street.
You need to find what the form needs to be completed and how you do complete it. I think it's in lesson 2 or 3. I think I've already seen it come up. So, it does come in there. Okay, so now we've got those things, we really come to what I think is more the first step. So that's deciding our total income, net income, and taxable income. Because the rest is just all your information, personal information. So we've got I think it's clearer when you see it here. We've got step 2 total income. Now, do you remember the guide I showed you at the very start of this lesson that's got the IRA? That guide tells you line by line what this means. So you'll have a definition in that book of what other income is. Now we will cover a few things of other income, but there's multiple things. We don't do everything on this course, but there's a few things we will cover off. Wage loss replacement compensation. There are all kinds of things we will cover off here as we go through. But you can see there's a lot of information here. And you generally find most people don't have a lot of extra.
In 1 kilometer, keep right toward Richmond Street.
But we will cover quite a lot. We've got pensioning, we've got provision, we've got everything. Now all these lines on the subsets here are lines that have to be reported and then subconsidered to income. So an interesting one that you'll start to see on here is like amounts that you receive if you have to live with your spouse and you are paid spouse support. Yes, that support is in your income, but the child support is not. So you
onto Richmond Street East.
As we go through the other payments, cover official systems, things like that. Again, I think we'll cover that in the same chapter as deductions for the chapter 3.
Stay in the second lane from right.
I just out of interest, you live really, really far north in Ontario. Like
In 700 meters, turn right onto Jarvis Street.
I think Thunder Bay qualifies as northern residents. Do we have anyone here that's like really north? Maybe not. Okay. So we'll cover it briefly, but it sounds like it's not going to be something that it's certainly not something I do in my own.
In 400 meters, turn right onto Jarvis Street.
Real southern, you know, I'm close to Toronto, just sort of on the borderline of the Barrie district. So this then is where we end up with the taxable income. So this tax form has changed a lot over the last 3 years. To me, this version for 2020, I feel actually is very smooth and very logical. A couple of years ago, they incorporated Schedule 1, which is basically this part here that we get into the tax return. And to be honest, I feel it makes a lot of sense, but it will throw you off a little bit when you start looking at the 2018 tax return is 4 pages. They incorporated Schedule 1 into it in 2019, and then in 2020 they flipped the order in the tax return. But we'll deal with that when we do some tax return.
Go past this light. Then at the next one, turn right.
Ooh, I don't think I can make the screen any bigger, because this is my full screen, I'm afraid, and I can't.
At the light, turn right onto Jarvis Street.
However, you have access to these forms. You don't need to be reading these lines right now. I'm just giving you an idea. Download the fillable forms. And you
In 1.9 kilometers, keep right onto Mount Pleasant Road.
Not the facts and figures, the federal reference book. The downloadable forms where you can print them all out. I showed you that at the start of the session, and I will repeat it at the end if you would like to see it again. No problem. Okay, so our next step, we have got our taxable income. Again, notice here at no point yet.
Red light, camera ahead.
Tax that someone may have paid on their RRSP withdrawal, on their income, on their investments. No point have we taken that into account yet. Now we're going to calculate the tax liability. This is where you see the progressive tax kick in. So, if we're looking at this, and someone earns, let's say someone earns 160,000, so that falls into this bracket. If I was filling this in manually, which you're going to do, am I going to fill in this section, this section, this section, and this section? What do we think, just taking a look at these numbers? Or am I just going to fill in this block? What did it say they earned? Did it say they earned 150? Okay, they earned 155,000. Am I going to fill in all these lines, or am I just going to fill in this line? Tobiah. And Sabia. Perfect. Okay, so this is where the one thing I'm going to say about tax forms, you won't go wrong if you read exactly what it tells you to do. Well, I mean, you might a little bit, but this is what I learned years ago when I did level 1. If you just keep reading the line, you can't go wrong. Read each line, and you'll get it right. So look, so enter your taxable income from line 62, and it's on number 63. So read this. Line 63 is this or less. But look at this. Line 63 is more than 150, but not more than 214. So this is telling you only fill in this column. Because up to this amount, because it's progressive, we know that up to this amount, the first 48, if you earn exactly 48,535, your tax liability is 7,280. That's why it gets added at this point. That's what these numbers are. So all you need to calculate is your increment between 150, what did I say the end? 155,000. So you'll calculate just this line. Yep, this is if you're filling this in manually, which you will be doing. You will only fill in this line. and then you will have the tax liability, 70. Oh, didn't mean to jump straight from there. So then this is the point where we have a tax liability. So we know an amount. We want to reduce that amount. That's effectively, we've got our first tax bill. I don't want to accept that first tax bill. Now I know that first tax bill, I've already paid some money towards that, which I'm going to take account of at the very end of this form. But first of all, I want to reduce that tax bill by as much as I can. So I'm going to take my number and I'm going to first now try and reduce it. So we have a number of things to reduce the tax liability. We have a basic personal amount. Effectively what this tells us is you could actually earn up to $13,229 and not pay any taxes. We have an age amount, a spouse amount. Again, we're going to have a whole session on this. We have the basic amounts that everyone gets, so usually what your employer kind of takes account of. However, there's a lot of things in here that your employer doesn't know about. They don't know if you've adopted a client, they don't know if you bought a house, they don't know if you're disabled, they don't know if you've studied. So this is where we're going to stack up and add up all your credits. Sorry, just slide skip. We're going to stack up and add up all of your credits. Here's your medical as well. We have a whole section on medical in chapter 13. So I'll explain exactly how you work out your medical. It's not that great. There is a refundable medical credit, which we'll talk about in chapter 13, but in general, for most people, medical expenses fall as a non-refundable credit. Then we have a total. We might have a nice big number here. Unfortunately, we times it by 15%. And then we're left with basically a number of credits. So there's a few more things that we can add in. There's a few more things that get added in, like federal dividend tax credit. We will be looking at in this course. There's a few more on here that we won't. The medical expenses were added in as a credit. And yes, the medical expenses are subject to, you have to exceed a minimum threshold. We'll cover that in chapter 13. Once you've added up all your credits, you take all your credits, you take the amount of tax liability, you do the tax liability minus all your credits, and then you will come to your net federal tax, and that's your tax bill. You will add on to that your provincial tax bill, which basically goes through the same stages we've just gone through on the provincial form. We're going to introduce that later. You're going to get familiar with the federal form first. And then is when we start to take account of, we've got our final tax bill. So what now can I do to pay that tax bill? So I've got my tax bill. What can I do to offset that tax calculation? What have I got to offset against it? Well, now this is where I can say, okay, my employer took some tax from me. I've already paid some of it. Right. So we've got our tax bill just here. On this line, we're going to now take off all the tax we've paid. Now, hopefully, this tax bill is smaller than the tax we've paid, and then we'll get a refund. But it might not be. So there's a few more things we can put in here. A big one for Ontario, climate action incentive. Those of you that have filed recently in the last few years must be familiar with this. So tell me, what's this? What do we know what this is? Do we know? This is not Trillium. Trillium is a benefit that's paid quarterly and not on the tax return. Or monthly. Monthly or annually, depending on how much you are. Yeah, this is the carbon tax rebate. It's not paid in every province, but it is in Ontario, and it's based on you as a single person, you get an amount. As a top up. If you earn over around 4,000 and under a certain amount, as a single person or a person with a child or a married couple, let's say your income will be quite a bit lower if you're married, but in general, I find I'm doing this mainly for single parents and single earners, usually young, starting off working when they're single, and their income is at a certain amount. The Canada's worker benefit will top up their income, providing a lump sum to top up. Most people receive it as a lump sum at the end of the year. You can apply for this tax credit in advance, but of course there is the risk if you apply for it in advance, then it may not be correct based on the income that you actually earn. So in general, it's retrospective. But that is claimed on Schedule 6, which we will look at as we go through the course. That's another big one. And we have a few other credits and things. Something we used to have here that I know often gets brought up by people in courses was for when Charles did sports and things like that, but that credit's no longer there. We do have a little something for certain teachers in there.
In 500 meters, keep right onto Mount Pleasant Road.
We'll go through all of those. So the aim here is that all of these numbers here, we hope, are bigger than the tax liability. Then you'll get a refund. If all of the tax you paid at source and all of your various different refundable credits that you have are less than your tax liability, that's when you're going to have a balance owing. In a nutshell, that's the tax return from start to finish. Please don't be overwhelmed by that. As I said, all those stages are what is to follow over the next however many weeks up until December that we have. We're going to break all that down into stages, so you're going to be really comfortable with how each stage works and all those little details about the lines that go through each stage and the relevant things that we can claim. Yeah, so don't worry, it's going to go into more depth as we go along. So let's get a little bit lighter now. This is much lighter. Filing methods. So how do we file a tax return? Tell me, how, those people file, what are your options? How can you file? E-file? Yep, online. E-file, post. Not that many options, right? It's paper file and online. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it online. So we've got paper file. Oh. You mail it to CRA. This really is trying to be phased out. You will find now that a lot of people that used to paper file have appeared. I found them into the block office going, have you got a tax return I can fill in? Where are the tax returns? The post office doesn't have them anymore. And that's basically because you have to
Go past this light, then use the right 2 lanes to keep right onto Mount Pleasant Road.
All are doing paper filing. So they're not sort of readily available for people to pick up. Of course, someone could go onto the CRA website and download the forms, but if someone is at the point where they are comfortable to download the forms, they're probably going to be filing online anyway. The tax return itself, anyway, when it's paper filed, does get entered onto the system. When as soon as it arrives at CRA, it can take months to be processed. Well, not months, but a hell of a lot longer, should we say, than an electronic file. And it ends up on the computer anyway, so really there's no reason you would choose to paper file over e-file if you can file it electronically. Now, there is certainly an H&R block week. We are only able to file 17, 18, 19 and 20 at the moment, and then next year it will be 18, 19.
In 2.3 kilometers, turn left onto St. Clair Avenue East.
We do paper file, but we don't get penalised for that, as we would if we paper filed anything else eligible. There are cases where someone is not eligible to e-file. The current, most recent years, it would be something like bankruptcy, or they're a non-resident, but again, we're not really going to be looking at that so much on this course. We're just going to be looking at the regular returns that we can e-file. There's a couple of ways of electronically filing, and I think someone mentioned with regard to everyone that works at H&R Block, as an individual, we have to have a My CRA account. We are registered as individual representatives under the umbrella of H&R Block. So it is, our movements and looking up for a client can be tracked as well to make sure that within H&R Block we are still acting within all the requirements for privacy and confidentiality, because we're handling other people's information. Now, NetFile is done differently. NetFile is an individual's home computer using their own individual SIN, date of birth, and it's to be that person personally that's doing it. Now, I'm aware some people do this for their family using this system, but in general it's supposed to be a non-third-party system. A non-agent system is just for you as an individual to file your tax return. So CRA has a number of online tools. So let's just see if everyone is with me right now. Who has a My CRA account set up? Give me a check or a cross or a yes or a no. I found in the last year or so a lot more people have this set up. So for those of you that have My CRA account, what kind of things can we see on that? What can we access? What can we do? For those of you that haven't got it set up, what we're doing this course, I'd recommend you do. It's going to really help you and it'll be really interesting for previous returns. So get this set up. You can look at your benefits, you can look at current benefit statements, you can look at your previous returns, you can look at all of your tax slips, whether you've received them or not. While you're doing this course, it will be very informative and very interesting for you to get
At the light, turn left onto St. Clair Avenue East.
jumping into it and going, as you take the course. I know I certainly did as I was going through, and it really makes a difference. Yes, you've got RSP, TFSA limits, you've got capital loss or capital gains, you've got all these.
Proceed to the route. In 1 kilometer, turn left onto Davisville Avenue.
Home buyers manual. There's everything on there. And there's also some administrative stuff. You can set up your bank account information there. You can set up your address there. You can make all those changes. The only thing you can't change there is your name. Well, you couldn't a while ago. I think I tried to change my last name there and it doesn't work, but I worked it out. Now, I can change your last name on your tax return if you would like. Or your name, that can be done. But on my account, it's pretty, covers everything. Please do get that set up during this course. My CRA and My Benefits CRA is basically the app version of my account. Why it's split into two apps, I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't then separate off your benefits from your My CRA account, which then will be your tax returns, your tax slips, that kind of thing. But that's their app version. So it's set up so that it's much easier to view on your phone, whereas my account on your phone doesn't really view very well. So you should download the app if you're just viewing it on your phone. What else do we have? So we have represent a client. So what do we think represent a client is? Any thoughts on that? Why have actually already just mentioned it.
At the next light, turn left.
So this is what I use at H&R Block to access your account if you came to see me. Yeah. It's the agent who's acting. Used by all the tax preparers. First of all, I then register. I have a rep ID with CRA. I know certainly I lose my access if I take the summer off from H&R Block. Because I work the tax season and take summer off. I couldn't take the summer off this year, but so I'm still kind of working underneath the H&R Block umbrella.
At the light, turn left onto Davisville Avenue.
Have represented clients set up. You have to have an account though to do this. You can't just. I don't believe you could just go in and set yourself up as represent a client without being through an agent. Maybe you can. I know some accountants have this set up, but I tend to find a lot the client information. So they've missed slips. They've missed RRSP contribution slips. They've missed a lot of things off. So it's a very useful tool to have. It allows me to see not everything that you can see on your own My Account. I cannot see your address. I cannot change your address through represented clients. I cannot see your bank account information, but I can see the stuff I need for your tax return. I can see your past tax returns. I can see your slips. I can see the current situation with your benefits. I can see any monies outstanding from prior tax returns. And that's certainly what I do a lot of right now, is trying to correct things that have been done by other people. And then also fill my return. So also fill my return is available through represented clients in H&R Blocks.
In 3.4 kilometers, turn left onto Castlefield Avenue.
Yeah, not every NetFile software, but most of them I know TurboTax used to do. Before I joined H&R Block, I used TurboTax. And also fill my return allows you to download all of the slips that CRA has into the tax return. This is a great advantage in case you haven't received one of your T4s, or you realise, you have multiple jobs and you've sort of maybe forgotten one. Believe me, this happens. I have people turn up with one T4 and said, yeah, I definitely only worked one job, and I find 7 T4s. That happens a lot, more than you would think. And that's the advantage of auto-fill my return. But also represented clients. I will always go and look on represented clients as well to make sure that we have everything. The only disadvantage of auto-fill my return is that if you're doing it at certain points in the year, maybe the forms haven't arrived at CRA. So we would never get away from doing a full tax interview with a client and asking every question. Just because it's not there on CRA, we're not number punchers here at H&R Block. We're going to ask questions. We want to make sure we're not missing anything that we're not seeing. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But at this point in the year, doing 2020 taxes, pretty much everything is in CRA. Apart from one gentleman I saw the other day, it took 2 years for his T4 to arrive at CRA, which has caused many problems that we're now trying to resolve. Generally, that doesn't happen, and that's the fault of the employer. So a notice of assessment. Now, I asked a question earlier saying, who's had a notice of assessment? Some people have, some people haven't. This is what you receive after you filed. If you're filing electronically, you're going to get this fairly quickly available in your mailbox to download, or it can still get mailed out to you. But you will probably find maybe around 5 days after submitting your return, you'll receive this. Now, it isn't the final one. You can get a notice of reassessment, by the way. This just confirms almost what you've submitted. Sometimes they catch something at that point straight away, and the notice of assessment will let you know that. But let me bring one up to show you, particularly for those of you who have not seen it, because I do have an illustration for you. Here we go. This is an inkling that I'm doing here. Yep, I realise the boxes are very close. I'll be across it. Well, yes, you can get a reassessment. You can get multiple reassessments. And if they reassess, let's say they reassess your 2020 right now, based on what they find on 2020, they could go back and reassess any of your past years, even though they're gone and passed and have technically in your mind been accepted. They'll go back. They can.
Stay in the left lane.
We see that a lot. Depending on what they find on your tax return, there actually isn't a time limit. If they find that you've done something quite serious, and they would consider non-reporting income serious, and that kind of stuff, they can actually go back as far as they want. In general, there is a timeline that we keep tax returns for, and in most cases, they usually only go back a couple of years, but they can go back, and we'll get onto that slide, and I'm going to be asking you how long you should keep your receipts for. But yeah, if you've done something that they would really say is quite delinquent, they can go back as far as they want, actually. Someone's already put in the sort of general amount. It's on another slide that we'll go through. But you should always keep your records for that long, just in case. Yeah, so you can get this notice of reassessment. reassessment asking for $2,000. Basically, because they'll have to give back the money that they were paid and pay what they should have paid in the first place. So reassessments can be work to work through, but should never be ignored. Yes, and then there will be interest. And there might be penalties depending on the missing information or the delinquency. So often if you, let's say you miss a T4 off your tax return, the first time you do it is considered an accident. The second time you do it, if it's within the 3-year period, you get a really hefty penalty because it's considered delinquency. If you get reassessed for missing a T4 slip, let's say now on 2020, you're very, very likely to have your next 1 or 2 tax returns assessed. I'm dealing with another, and I'm saying that because I'm dealing with 2 cases like that right now. And the person really genuinely didn't mean to make this mistake, but was doing their own tax returns, so made the mistake. And genuinely were not trying to avoid reporting income, they just made errors. But their penalty was around $4,500. And we're trying to work that through, because I've got some things that I think should have been added to the tax return that credits and things that I can add in to at least reduce bill, so should reduce the penalty as well. So yeah, you need to read this. Most people look at the first page, they look at the second page, they confirm everything. This is just a basic amount. The most important bit people should read though is this bit, which people don't read. Explanation of changes and other important information. This will tell you if CRA at this point has changed something. You know what, if they're going to change anything, it's best to do it at this point before they pay out your refund. But it also gives you little bits of information, like this person here, they didn't use their Alberta tuition or education amount. They could probably carry it forward. They can go on the website and see this, maybe they can use it next year. But this also tells you if they've made any changes, so it's good to read that. Another thing that you're told on your notice of assessment, it gives you your available contribution room for RRSPs. For those of you not familiar with what RRSPs does, they feature heavily on different things we do with the tax return, and we will be covering all registered plans in Chapter 10. But this is often, the bank will often ask you notice of assessment when you go in and say, I want to contribute to my RRSP, they'll say, what's your limit? And they prefer to see this notice of assessment to confirm it. But also, you can go into my account and you can see that. This particular notice of assessment tells the person how to use my account, because I'm guessing this one was a mailed one. Here, look, go papers. It's giving you instructions. From there. So that's what a notice of assessment looks like, and that's the kind of things that you'll see on it. If you're receiving your notice of assessment electronically, you'll get notified by email. Now, the email, do you think it says this is your notice, you will get a notice of assessment? It doesn't. It basically just says, you have mail. That's how you know it's from CRA. It'll be English and French, and it will say, you have mail. I'm pretty sure usually in one of the slides we'll have like a spam email from CRA just to kind of show you the differences and what to look for. But when CRA puts anything in your mailbox, all they do is send you a message saying you have mail. And the kind of mail that will be in there, it will be notifying you of your benefits, it will be notifying you of your notice of assessment, it will be telling you if they are going to reassess your tax return. So it's really important not to ignore those emails, even though they say exactly the same thing, you have mail, there could be something vitally important in there. So don't ever ignore them and tell clients not to ignore them. Through represented clients, the brilliant thing is I get to see all of that mail, so I can catch things. Usually we only get to catch them after someone's been reassessed and slapped with a bill, but we can certainly go back and change things. So as you know, the explanation of changes, your RRSP information, and then whether you're paying for it electronic. Now, what reason someone might suddenly, oh my goodness, I've got to get my tax return done because I need my notice of assessment now. Like right now, can't even wait a week for it. Mortgage, loans, yeah, they're obviously the most common ones, yeah. Yeah, so sometimes people, they go to the bank, they're excited.
At the stop sign, turn left onto Castlefield Avenue, then turn right onto Bathurst Street.
Really got their pre-approval, they walk into the bank and the bank knows we need your notice of assessment, and they go, oh my goodness, yeah, or student loan, anything. They go, oh my goodness, they run over to H&R Block, or they run
At the stop sign, turn right onto Bathurst Street.
That it might take a week to get the notice of assessment, which we don't have, so they want it right that minute. So we can do it. It's a T185. I'll show you when we get into the tax software. Not the T185, sorry. It's on the T183. And the T185 is a direct deposit.
In 700 meters, turn left onto Glencairn Avenue.
Software. Really quickly. It gets assessed immediately. As I said, with every notice of assessment doesn't mean it's the final one. They can always get reassessed later. The only time that you wouldn't get it immediately is if something in that return just triggers an automatic hold for an on-the-spot assessment. Sometimes they're random, sometimes it could be just something in the return. The express notices I've done, none of them have ever been held yet, but it is a possibility that you would tell people when you're doing it. At this point though, if that person is not signed up for online mail, they need to be, because no hard copy is going to be mailed out. So they should really get signed up for the online mail. Now we get onto the records and receipts. So,
Go past this light, then at the next one, turn left.
deductions and different things that we apply for. We talked about RRSPs, we talked about childcare. We talked about with credits, there was medical.
At the light, turn left onto Glencairn Avenue.
We'll talk more about, in each section we get to, we'll talk as to what is considered an official receipt for each specific claim, because they can vary a little bit depending on what you're claiming for as to what is considered official and non-official. For example, a medical receipt would always be not the MasterCard Visa debit slip, not those. Also those fade over the years, so you don't want it to be those. It would be the full printout. You know when you go to the dentist, you get the full printout of maybe what your insurer has paid and then what you paid. It has to be quite specific with all the details for the tax purposes. But when it comes to things like childcare, you can actually have a handwritten receipt for childcare. It's one of the only things that you can have handwritten. But as I said, we'll look at what's an acceptable receipt for each credit or deduction as we go through it. Now, do we need to send these in with our tax returns with paper, or do we need to email them in as we e-file? No. You're correct. I mean, years ago we did. We would send them in. But right now we're on a trust-based system. Everything we submit to CRA is accepted as you've got the receipt, that's fine, we accept it, that's good. But CRA will randomly review returns and request for supporting documentation. And this frequently happens with things that give you a large deduction and make a big impact on your returns in particular. Often union dues on a separate receipt, not on a T4, could be, I do a lot of union dues in my area, and we're talking sort of, on average, around 2,600 as a deduction. Very frequently they'll come up as a receipt. And school fees...
In 1.3 kilometers, turn right onto Marley Avenue.
Deduction. You know, so these are the kind of things then that the CRA will randomly ask for documents for. I often find when they do this, particularly with childcare, they'll then go back on a prior year, or they may also pick on a claim for eligible dependent. I'll explain what an eligible dependent claim is when we do Chapter 12. They're typical ones that come up because a single parent often can get quite a large refund, particularly if they're working, they have daycare, they have children, so they do, unfortunately, get picked on quite a bit for reviews. What a CRA will do is they will firstly send a letter requesting the prove that they are correct, CRA is right. They are always right. If CRA says your child is not your child, they are right. This is the fun one with biological parents proving that their child is theirs. But also, it's usually that they prove as well that they are living, the child is definitely living with them and not with the other parent. But yeah, CRA is always right. The onus is on you to prove that they are right. At H&R Block, we have checklists, and we will also, or certainly I will never ever do...
At the next light, turn right.
Based on their say-so. Oh yes, I had $8,000 in childcare. I will not do it without seeing that childcare receipt and put the copy in my file and a copy in their folder on the return. So I know if they get audited, we've got no issues. But yeah, if you're doing it at home, quite frequently people will go, I'm going to get...
At the light, turn right onto Marley Avenue.
About this, I think they're about that. And this will cause you problems if you are in a review situation. What then happens then is, if you don't respond within 30 days, a notice of assessment, or called a notice of reassessment, will be sent. In that notice of reassessment, basically, you're probably going to owe some money, and that's going to be scary. But it can often be sorted. You just need to go back and look at the original letter and bring up the supporting documents. Now, we talked about how...
In 500 meters, turn left onto Wonderly Drive.
CRA has told us how long we should generally keep them. And I know people have some ideas that 6 years, 7 years, at least 6 years. You know what? I mean, I've got plenty of clients that don't want that. And why not, you know?
Turn left onto Wonderly Drive, then turn right onto Bolingbroke Road.
But keep them for at least 6 years. Now, frequently we will, in the office, do 10 years worth of returns for a client, so hopefully for them, all of their 10 years information will all be in one folder. And that's very, not very common to do 10 years, but it's quite common to do multiple years of returns. Okay. So,
At the next stop sign, turn right.
Now, with regard to looking at books and things, that's not what I'm asking for questions. I'm going to show you them as well. For people that maybe missed the start, I'll show you those as well. But any questions that you want to raise?
At the stop sign, turn right onto Bolingbroke Road. Then the destination is on your right.
Can you file two returns for 2 years at once? Yes, you absolutely can. What a great question. As I've mentioned, sometimes, actually, it's happening a lot right now because of COVID and people were unsure what they were doing.
The destination is on your right. 7 Bolingbroke Road.
Filing with 2019.
Arrived.
I'll tell you one thing we do quite a lot as well, is we'll get into this and decide who should file. So if you're on maternity leave and you need some extra money, yes, withdraw from your RRSP then, but it's best not to take it out from your RRSP if you're a high income earner, because effectively that amount you take out will get taxed at your highest rate. So a non-refundable tax credit is, once you've calculated your tax liability, a non-refundable tax credit is an amount that we can use to reduce your tax liability to zero. We can't reduce it to a negative, but we can reduce it to zero. Most non-refundable $1,000 a month, then you put in $1,200 as other employment income. That probably, at that point, you might have to look down whether it's going to be self-employed income or whether it's other employment income. We will discuss the ins and outs of that again as we go through the course. Good questions. I like questions. Good questions. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so maybe I'll move on to just a summary of what we've done today, and then we'll be good to be finishing on
Chị ơi, năm nay chị có ăn bầu không?
Trời ơi, đâu có ở nhà đâu có trồng bầu đâu mà ăn.
Giờ đem bầu qua nha.
Thôi, ăn đi. Trời ơi, chị không cần đâu Liên ơi.
Không
Chị
phải.
có hôm qua rồi.
Không, tại vì em cũng nhiều quá, em chia mỗi người một trái.
À, nhiều quá không hết cho phải không?
Thì phải lấy thảo chút chứ, phải cho qua cho lại chứ.
Thì cho thì lấy chứ còn cũng nhà cũng có rau chứ không phải không
Nhà
có.
chị thiếu gì rau, nhưng mà năm nay không có bầu thì lấy bầu.
Thì nếu có thì cho, còn nếu mà đủ ăn rồi thì thôi.
Không, dư.
Vậy hả? Chứ còn năm nay là không có trồng bầu.
Em thì em chỉ thích bầu à.
Vậy hả? Chị ghét quá tại vì nó ra rậm rạp rau ria quá, mệt quá.
Tại vì cái nhà này nó có cái máy hiên sắt, máy sắt đó. Của cái sườn để mình nó làm cái nhà cho người ta ra ngồi chơi đó. Cho nên là cây leo lên nó mát luôn, là vừa đúng luôn.
Vậy thì được, cái nhà chị nó ra mà rậm rạp quá đi, nhìn mà nhức cái đầu luôn á.
Đúng rồi, còn cái này thì nó vừa luôn, đã luôn, năm sau trồng tiếp.
Ủa năm nay ta nhiều lắm hả?
Hả?
Năm nay nhiều bầu lắm hả?
Nhiều chứ, ra liên tục à.
Vậy hả?
Cắt xong là cái trái khác nó sẽ mập bự nhanh, còn nếu mà không cắt liền á thì nó chậm ra.
Để đếm được bao nhiêu trái rồi?
20 trái rồi đó.
Dữ không?
2 cây, một cây bầu đầu nhỏ đít to, bầu nở hậu. Bầu nở hậu năm ngoái á, giữ giống lại á. Mà gieo mà ra được con cây à. Rồi một cái cây bầu là bầu này thon này á, thì là mua ngoài chợ. Tại vì cái bầu của em á là chắc tại mọi người sớm á.
Đúng rồi.
Cho nên nó chết nó yếu ngay lúc đó. Còn cái này á, tụi em với ông Toàn á là sao mà trễ quá, đi tới cuối tháng 6 mới bỏ xuống đất kìa.
Đúng rồi, vậy là hợp lý đó.
Cho nên cuối cùng là thấy nó lên, thấy quải quá, nó chịu này là xong rồi. Năm nay nghề nông thất thoát, ai về đâu nhờ vậy mà nó giờ nó khỏe. Đây, màu.
Trời ơi, đi hốt bên nhà ăn Tuyết á hả? Bên kia nè hả?
Không có gì đó.
Cái thùng đó là cái gì vậy?
Ở dưới đó là đồ của em.
Trời ơi, đi đâu mà làm cái xe kiểu vậy?
Thôi chở cái chiếc xe đạp xuống cho mấy nhóc sinh viên á. Nó xin chiếc xe đạp chở xuống cho nó.
Trời đất ơi, sao mà nhiều thế? Mày coi mướp của tao mà kia kìa.
Chị ăn không? Ủa?
Hả? Thôi đem về nhà đi.
Sao vậy?
Kia, salad kia.
Ồ.
Nhưng mà cô chị vậy nha.
Have reached mailbox number 64792333787. Please leave your message after the tone.
Ồ, dễ thương. Con đâu có phone đâu.
Vậy hả? Thế để cô Linh phone 3 lần.
Không,
để
bà phone con á.
Dạ nó không biết có chuyện gì mà để con thử. Chắc con khỏe không?
Dạ khỏe, bà phone con á chứ không phải con phone bà.
Vậy hả?
Ừ.
Mà thấy để 3 lần. Chắc
Thì cái máy bà bấm nút lộn á.
Dạ.
Ừ.
Nhiều khi nó không có gì quan trọng, nhiều khi cô đang làm việc làm mất thì giờ của cô á, thành ra ngại, không có chuyện gì quan trọng mà nhớ cứ nhớ hoài thôi.
Dạ.
Nhớ rồi có cô giúp cái này giúp cái kia đủ thứ hết.
Dạ. Giờ bà vẫn ở đó hả bà?
Dạ con ở đó, ở cái building nè.
Dạ.
Hôm trước thì nghe báo nói nghe nó chủ này bán cái chủ khác.
Ồ vậy hả?
Rồi không biết nào nói là bán ai bán được lên giá tiền nó lên giá nữa là ở không nổi. Tại vì 2 phòng đã 1.000 mấy rồi, 1.001 mấy chục rồi. Bây giờ nếu chủ khác thì lên giá nó ở không nổi, có đủ tiền.
Mình ở lâu nó không có được quyền lên giá.
Không, cái mình ở mấy người ở lâu lắm rồi.
Không, mình có đang mình đang ở là mình cũng không bị lên giá, chừng nào người mới vô á mới lên giá. Mình ở cũ là cái giá nó cứ vậy hoài, mỗi năm nó lên mấy chục đồng thôi.
Dạ.
Thì bà cứ yên tâm đi, chủ yếu là bà ngồi, ta không có đi được thì ngồi ráng tập thể dục.
Dạ có tập. Ở nhà cũng kéo gối, thầy Tư cũng về nói rồi nếu gì không có đi được á, thì ở nhà gì kéo gối á, cứ nằm cứ kéo gối hoài đến cả 100 cái rồi cái đường mỏi thì thôi.
Dạ đúng
Kéo
rồi,
gối.
đúng rồi, chứ đừng có ngồi yên là nó từ từ nó sẽ teo cơ.
Ngồi ở nhà không có đi đâu cô ơi, không có đi đâu hết á. Ở nhà tập không à, tập hết cái này tập qua cái kia.
Con của bà sao? Người con của bà có đi làm không?
Dạ nó cũng đi làm gạt ở trong mấy cái tiệm ăn đó, mà bây giờ cái xe bị đụng nát hết rồi, bây giờ cửa hiển chưa có đền. Mà không có xe cũng không có đi làm được, đi giao hàng cho ta đó. Thành ra giờ mướn cái xe để đi đỡ. Cái xe bị đụng, bị nặng lắm nên nó bị dập hết. Mà bảo hiểm biết chuyện nào đây là đi làm cực quá, bây giờ phải mướn cái xe để đi giao hàng á.
Thường mấy chiếc xe mà nó bị đụng hư là bảo hiểm nó phải đền nhanh, nó không có chậm.
Sao hôm nay lâu rồi, cũng cả tháng rồi mà bảo hiểm không có nói năng gì hết á. Rồi giờ đâu có xe đi làm đâu, đi xe buýt không à. Nên bây giờ mướn cái xe để đi. Anh mướn được cái xe thì anh cứ kêu má đi, má đi bác sĩ đi đâu cũng chở má đi. Mấy hôm đi bác sĩ nói không đi taxi tốn tiền quá thôi. Thôi không có đi. Bây giờ nó mướn xe rồi nó kêu má đi. Tôi bây giờ tôi hay quên đúng cô ơi. Bây giờ tôi muốn lại nhà cái chú ba để đóng tiền lịch điểm gì mỗi tháng 20 đồng á. Mà giờ tôi đâu có nhớ nhà ông ở đâu mà từ con đường gì.
Giờ bà muốn con chạy tới lấy tiền không? Con đem qua cho ông ba cho.
Dạ. Dạ muốn.
Rồi vậy chờ con chút con chạy tới. Chờ chút con chạy tới đi.
Ở chừng nào cũng được con.
Không, con đang ở đây rồi con tới luôn.
Ở nhà không đi đâu á.
Không, con đang ở đây con đi luôn chứ sợ bữa khác con bận.
Dạ không biết mình đóng.
Để chờ con chút con gọi cho con chờ chút con gọi cho ổng đi rồi con gọi lại bà.
Dạ. Dạ. Cảm ơn cô trước nè. Cái sợ nói sao mình không có đóng tiền rồi giờ đâu có đi được đâu mà đi.
Dạ. Mà tại vì hội thì cũng không có bắt người ta đóng đâu, để bà kỹ thôi chứ người ta đâu có bị bắt đóng đâu. mạnh á, bệnh á.
Vậy thôi tôi đứng tôi chờ nha.
Rồi đứng chờ đi. Đi vô trong đi, một lát con tới con chạy vô.
Không sao đâu, không sao.